Hi, I'm Patrick Cobb with AARP South Carolina. AARP South Carolina is pleased to sponsor the Post and Courier's Pints and Politics series. AARP is a nonpartisan organization. We don't endorse candidates nor parties. We work on issues important for families 50 plus in South Carolina. Follow us at aarp.org/SC.
Well, good to make your acquaintance, Mal. You run for the seat before, a few times actually, in 2016 and 2018, back when Tom Rice was the incumbent, and both times were a little disappointing. In 2016, you lost the general election by more than 20 points. 2 years later, you were defeated in a runoff primary election by 3 points, and this round, you only narrowly avoided a runoff election against Darrell Scott, who you'll remember lost to your current opponent, Russell Fry, 2 years ago by about 30. It's hard to ignore the 7th Congressional District, especially after the defeat of Tom Rice, feels even redder than it used to be. It's a district that already favors Republicans by 19 points before that, and at this point, I think voters have made clear in several straight elections the party of the candidate they prefer, and I'm just curious, running for this seat, what case you're making to people that their current representation isn't stacking up the way it should be?
First, thanks to Post and Courier for running this dialogue. I think these are vital for democracy. I believe in town hall meetings, and I did a listening tour through the district extensively, from the foothills through the PD to the beach area. There are a lot of unmet needs. I've heard about them on the boards I've served on, and I feel that folks could want us to do more in Washington to meet the needs of people here, whether it's creating more jobs, having decent wages, more affordable and accessible health care, protecting the environment better, making child care more affordable, protecting our seniors. There are things that can be done differently. I think there's a role for government, and I think that if you don't take any corporate or banking money, and you don't take money from the Democratic Party, it allows you to be independent and speak truth to power. And it makes it a little tougher to run. I'm undaunted. It feels like people are listening maybe more this time around. We've been campaigning on common sense for the common good. My dad was an Eisenhower Republican, fought in World War II as a tail gunner on B-17s. He was a fearless guy, but he had PTSD, sensitive to the needs of veterans. My mom was a Kennedy Democrat. We had spirited but civil dialogues at home. And I think it's vital for us to have a civil dialogue about the issues that we face as a country. There are a lot of divisions, a lot of polarization. And I think there could be a new model of bipartisanship and civil dialogue, talking to people, hearing what their concerns are, and then serving the public the best you can. So I hold faith in that, and I realize it's an uphill battle, but I think Jimmy Carter was right with the Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission decision. We've created auctions at election time, and we have a system of unlimited bribery. So when you take their money, you have to listen to them. And I really believe in Matthew, you can't serve two masters. So I'm going to raise these issues. I've raised them in a classroom for 50 years, and it seems like at the end of the semester, a lot of students are listening to me closely, and they become more engaged in politics. And so I'm out just trying to raise the issues the best I can.
All right, thank you.
Moving to a topic that has become particularly divisive in the country and within members of your own party, and that is the ongoing war in Israel and Gaza and the U.S. government's relationship with Israel and Palestine. You've been to the Middle East, you've been to Jerusalem, so you have a particular experience and background that lends itself to this. Do you approve of the current administration's handling of the conflict?
Israel has a right to defend itself, but genocide is not defense. I've been to the Middle East doing human rights work in '73, and that's what moved me into teaching the first time. So I talked to a number of Palestinians then, and my hope and prayer was that sweet reason could prevail. I went back during the first Intifada to do human rights work in the West Bank and Gaza, and it became clear to everyone that there's no military solution to a political problem, just as there's no military solution to a political problem in Ukraine. It bears repeating that the Oslo Accords, which called for a two-state solution, were broken by Israel by continuing to build settlements on the West Bank, and ultimately there was a loss of faith by many Palestinians in Fatah, which was the origin of Hamas. So I saw that evolution. It was clear to everybody on our delegation and people that follow it closely. Now, it's tragic what happened in Israel. There's no excuse for the violence from Hamas, but there needs to be a political solution, a two-state solution. I think Jimmy Carter, again, was on the right track with that. That Kamala Harris is differing some from Joe Biden on that issue. By being an independent Democrat, I'm able to share the stories of the people that I met during the first Intifada. The first woman I met had a child die of tear gas. It was hard to take notes on it, but it's also very clear that we need to have some sort of dignity and homeland for the Palestinians if we want to create security in the Middle East. This war is spinning out of control, and the Netanyahu administration is not representing what would create security in Israel, let alone security in the region. And it's dragging down American prestige and American trust in the region and leaving us more at risk. So I would speak out on that from personal experience. I just bear witness to what I've seen. Incidentally, when I did that type of work, it inspired me to go to Central America to look at what was going on there. And I think by bearing witness, I'm able to talk a bit more clearly about foreign policy issues, and I look forward to doing that. I love to serve on the foreign policy committees in Congress, and I look to be a problem solver. I deeply believe you reach across the aisle, you find people that want to get things done, work with Republicans, find the middle ground, and let's move forward with it. I think there's more posturing than pragmatism in Congress.
Some Democrats have advocated for withholding military aid to Israel. Would you support that?
I spoke out 4 months ago to withhold military aid to Israel. I did it when it risked my situation politically, but I thought that was the position that would get the attention of the Netanyahu government, because nothing else is getting their attention. And he's a very clever demagogue. As a political leader, he's been granted wide access in the United States. What happened in the West Bank and Gaza wouldn't stand the light of day. Everybody that visits there comes up with the same conclusions, and it's tragic. But I think that that's the way to get, particularly the Netanyahu government, to listen, to pay more attention to the need for what they had signed on to in Israel at the Oslo Accords, two-state solution.
Let's shift over to domestic issues. Right now, one of the biggest headlines I think both political parties are facing is how to deal with the number of undocumented migrants entering the country. It's been an issue for many years at this point, and Republicans, as you know, in the upcoming administration, should they take power, have advocated for mass deportation of those undocumented migrants. There have been harsher penalties proposed for those who cross the border illegally. And there have been stricter limits on who can enter the country, including strict vetting for education attainment, weeding out people who have un-American views, et cetera. And as you're probably aware, Gallup polling shows that about 55% of Americans want immigration into the United States to decrease, and it's the highest such level since 2001. We've seen the rate increase about 10% among Democrats too, which shows that to some degree, Democrats believe that there should be greater restrictions as well. Curious on this issue, where do you stand and what do you think needs to be done to address the issue?
Our current system is broken. And We're a nation of many nations. We're a nation of immigrants. It's always difficult for us to compromise on these issues. The last major compromise was under the Reagan administration, 1986. So this is never an easy set of questions for us to sort out. I think there was a good faith effort from the Biden-Harris team to work across the aisle in the Senate to cut a deal on immigration. And just to refresh your recollection, it was former President Trump that called Senator Mitch McConnell and said, scuttle the deal. I want to run on this as an issue. And I think there was an effort to do that. So the Democrats were making a good faith effort with conservative Republicans. You need to have bipartisan support for any bill. And I think we would have made some progress with that. We'll never know, but it sure seemed like they were off to a good start. And I think we need to come up with a compromise on it. No one's going to be completely pleased with it. I agree with former President Reagan that immigration is a foundational freedom in America. We've found compromises before. Clearly, we need to guard our borders. We need more asylum judges. We need to come up with numbers that are reasonable. They will be a political compromise. I think whatever the political compromise is between Democrats and Republicans, let's move forward by not having a deal. We leave our borders open. More undocumented people come over. More drugs come in. This is not an acceptable situation, but it's going to have to be a bipartisan solution. Listen, in Washington, many problems are left unsolved because they're good politics. They just aren't good for the country. So I would move towards some sort of bipartisan deal. Clearly, it's not where we want it to be. And we're a nation of many nations. I believe in the Statue of Liberty and protecting our borders. So we'll have to work out a compromise.
Is there anything specific in the Republican plan that you see as a non-starter?
I'd have to take a look at what the proposals are, because there are a lot of proposals on the table. I think some of the fear of immigrants to say that they're causing crime at great amounts isn't borne by the facts. And while they're a difficulty at the local level because of cost, they're paying Social Security taxes that they're never going to collect. So economically, it's more a wash, taking jobs that most Americans don't want. But clearly the system's broken. We've got to have limits. We have to have secure borders. So with that in place, we need to find a compromise. And I think the sooner the better.
All right, thank you.
Access to abortion has become a hotly contested topic after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. As a representative in the U.S. House, do you feel there should be any federal limits on abortion? And if so, what should those be?
I think Roe v. Wade was a better decision from the Supreme Court. I believe in women's reproductive rights. I believe it's the role of a woman and her husband, a woman and her minister, a woman and her doctor to make decisions on her reproductive health.
If you were presented with a federal abortion ban after 15 weeks, would you support it?
I wouldn't.
We're at the point where we're asking our AARP question of the day. As you're probably aware, the United States' social security system is rapidly approaching insolvency. It's getting to a point where benefits in the future will probably be minimal, potentially non-existent at some point, and was curious, raising the age of retirement is already a political third rail. What are your ideas to address the issue?
It's a lot easier to teach a class and have 50 minutes on these questions. I mean, this is tough to give the short answer, but why is the Social Security tax capped at $168,000? I believe in a flat tax. I think it's a good idea. Well, if people earning more than $168,000 were to pay the same rate that everybody else pays, we would go a long ways towards solvency for Social Security. And I think that's the first step is you raise the cap. I wouldn't raise the age. Some people do manual labor, and it's much tougher than white-collar labor. It destroys their bodies. I wouldn't raise the age on Social Security. I think we have to take a hard look at whether people should be paying Social Security taxes on the money that they do get. And I think if we find that the minimum wage has been unfairly kept low, those who worked for 40 or 50 years at an unfair minimum wage don't get much in retirement. They need to have their Social Security bumped up some so they can live in dignity. A fourth of our seniors, a fourth of them, can't afford prescription drugs that their doctors tell them that they need. I don't think this is the country that we want to have. I think we need to protect those in the dawn of life and those in the twilight of life, and we can do an awful lot better on Social Security. But it would mean raising the taxes on the wealthy, and in a system of unlimited bribery, which is what we have with our election process, the needs of the wealthy are heard very clearly. So it'll be a fight to raise those Social Security taxes, but I'd move in that direction.
And I know this is your area of expertise, so I'm a little bit more curious now too. There's always been arguments in this conversation that doing so might lead to an exodus of employers, might lead to an exodus of people who create jobs. I'm just wondering your response to that.
Go ahead.
Particularly within Social Security, payroll taxes, et cetera. Just in regards to raising tax rates.
Well, I think the wealthy in this country, 10 families have more wealth than half the country. Our millionaires are living with more wealth than biblical kings could have dreamed of having. They need to pay their fair share so that we take care of seniors. I believe a flat tax where everyone pays the same amount can be a good idea. And if applied there, it would make Social Security solvent. So I would push for that. Now, there's certainly going to be a compromise on it, but it would raise the cap and make Social Security more secure as we look at other options to stabilize the situation for seniors. Low-income housing would be part of it with infrastructure, looking again at Medicare. There are a whole range of things that will support seniors with more dignity, but Social Security taxes, I think, it's essential for us to move forward, make them more fair, make Social Security more secure.
Thank you.
As you know, inflation has been a top concern for many, many voters, and the Democratic administration has been criticized for the inflation problem. Obviously, now inflation has fallen precipitously, but we haven't seen worker wages keep track still with that inflation problem. Do you think Democrats have done enough to address these issues?
I think they were off to a good start with the Inflation Reduction Act, their investments in job creation, sustainable energy. Look, it's really complicated when you get into questions of inflation. Some of it, and it depends on which economists we're listening to, is still there from the money that was put in on COVID relief so that we could make sure that businesses and families were solvent. That extra money in the economy caused a lot of inflation. But we also have price gouging, which has been prosecuted and could be prosecuted more effectively. I think that's part of it. And putting a tariff up on all incoming goods is just going to raise prices. So I don't think that's an answer either. I think the efforts on the part of the Biden-Harris administration lowered inflation. They've lowered the unemployment rate, but 60% of the country's living paycheck to paycheck. So they want more relief as well. The inflation rate, as you rightly pointed out, is quite low. And in the trading of currencies, all around the world, bankers and investors want the American dollar, so they see our economy as very strong, getting stronger. They're betting with their investments on the American dollar. We can do more. I want to bring to your attention that other ideas in this regard to strengthen the economy were proposed by Democrats and Hakeem Jeffries, but Republicans in the Congress didn't pass legislation that would have raised the minimum wage, would have expanded health care, would have made education and child care more affordable, would have invested more money in infrastructure, which would grow the economy. Those proposals were stopped by a do-nothing Congress led by Republicans. So I think a lot of good ideas are out there. I think we have a lot of work to do, but I think solid progress was made the first 2 years of the Biden-Harris administration, and we got a lot more work to go.
You know, acknowledging those arguments, if you believe the polling, we've seen a lot more working class voters who used to be loyal Democratic voters, more and more supporting Republicans. What do Democrats need to do to kind of convince those people that they can trust them to handle America's economy?
That's a good question. Democrats and a lot of pundits are wondering that one too. I think to make clear where Democrats stand on economic issues, to raise the minimum wage, to make it a living wage, to provide health care for all Americans, to make education affordable, I'm not saying free, but affordable. Child care can be made affordable. We have low-income housing needs all across the district. You know, on a listening tour, every county I went to talked about these issues. Low-income housing, and there's a role for the federal government in providing more low-income housing, along with state and local governments putting money in. Money for infrastructure projects. I think that needs to be more clearly explained. I'm not sure Biden was a very good communicator during his time in office. I think he was pretty good at governing, but not campaigning. But also on social issues, a number of working class people agree more with the Republicans, and I think that's part of it. And labor unions, right now, 1 out of 10 Americans is in a labor union. When it was 30%, the voice of labor was heard more clearly by a number of folks. But I think the issues that I laid out are common sense. I think a lot of the public wants increase in minimum wage to make it a living wage. They want health care affordable. They want education affordable, child care affordable. They want low-income housing to stabilize families. So, and I would tax the very wealthy. You know, it was pretty clear under the Eisenhower administration, where we built the infrastructure that was the envy of the world, that we had to tax the wealthy to get the resources responsibly. We didn't raise the debt, and it worked during that time, and we can do that again.
Well, now we're on to some reader questions, and starting to feel like the World Economic Forum here, because we have another economic question. Who bears the burden of the corporate tax? And please explain your answer.
You know, I think there's going to be a limit on taxes on corporations because they're just relocating. I mean, it's a global economy. Right now, we are tied more closely to China in terms of trade, transportation, communication, investment, and environment than South Carolina was to New York when the Constitution was signed. The oceans have shrunk to lakes. So if you put a larger tax on corporations, at some point, they're just going to relocate. So I'm not sure that's the answer on things. I do think those that benefit from high wages or are in management and are able to pay higher taxes need to pay their fair share. I'm not sure raising corporate taxes is the path that we need to take to create more prosperity. I actually believe we need to invest in education because it's a global economy and we're competing with other people with master's degrees. I remember being in Korea on a Fulbright 20 years ago, 60 in a class. They dare not do anything to interrupt their opportunities for advancement. They went to school on Saturdays, cram schools, and they are able to compete globally because they make those investments and commitments in education. As an educator for 50 years, we need to do that. The earlier we make the investments, the better kids do. All the studies show that. A dollar invested in early childhood education yields about 7 in return. All the studies show that. You know, if you're in business and don't invest $1 to get 7, you shouldn't be in business and you shouldn't be leading in government. We need to make those investments. Longer term, to create jobs and prosperity, we need the infrastructure to be built up. Our electrical grid is vulnerable to cyber attack. We can't bring solar and wind power from rural areas to urban areas. We got a lot that we need to do with the way of those investments. Sustainable energy is a growing field. I'm pleased that we have the EV battery plant here in Florence. We need to make that more possible for all types of investment, foreign and domestic, to build the jobs that are sustainable in the future, to lead the world on EV batteries, solar power, wind power, so that Americans are getting the jobs and others are buying our produce. And we can do that, but we'll have to make investments. And there's a role for the federal government in tax breaks in those regards and research and development, so that if you get 10,000 graduate students looking at making a more efficient solar panel or wind power, that we make the breakthroughs, we get the jobs here. We have to think short-term, mid-term, and long-term in creating jobs and prosperity.
Another quick reader question here, as we're running out of time and we want to make sure we get to our lightning round. But I think if there's one thing many people can agree on, it's that politics has become really divisive. So what can both parties do to bring the temperature down and bring back civil discussion?
That's where I started. I grew up with it. I demanded it in my classroom. We demanded it at the college. In the community, we need to demand it, call people out who aren't civil. We know this election could be close. We could get more divided. It's unsettling. And I think we need to see the risk for what it is, that we're the United States of America. We're not red states or blue states. And I think we have to heighten our commitment to civility, to harmony. E pluribus unum, out of many, we're one. I think that's being tested at this point. I think some of our adversaries would like to divide us. You know, I'm hearing from, I had a blessing of reading for my livelihood. So I read a story of the Minister of Cyber Defense in Taiwan because of all of the cyber attacks by the Chinese. And some of those cyber attacks are polarization attacks to divide Taiwan, because a divided country falls. Great empires fall from within. So I think this is absolutely vital for our future, and I'm committed to civil dialogue.
All right, we're moving on to the lightning round. Here, the shortest possible answer you can give. First question. If elected, who would you like to mold your congressional service after?
Oh my goodness. Well, we had two exemplary public citizens serving in the Senate when I came to South Carolina in 1987. Ernest Hollings and Strom Thurmond. Both did great jobs with constituent service. I think that's absolutely vital. So I'd pick the strongest team possible. And I know some of the people who worked on those teams, both with Strom Thurmond's team and Ernest Hollings' team. So yeah, that's a good question, and that's what I'd aspire to.
All right, favorite Buc-ee's item?
Pretty good with a barbecue sandwich if you want one on the road. So that's where I'd go. I have a sweet tooth. I try to keep it in check. Yeah, I like the savory, so barbecue.
Yeah, those corn nuggets are pretty good too. You've had those, yeah. And if you had one, what would your entrance song be?
Oh my goodness. I'm not sure.
Come on, you gotta have something.
I'm really not sure.
All right, what's your favorite band?
On that one.
What's your favorite band? Singer?
Oh, well, I like Fleetwood Mac, so.
All right, there you go.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. Thank you. Really appreciate your time.
Oh, great to join you. Hey, thanks a lot. Great going, guys. Thank you all.
Everything that happens in politics is local. It affects your neighbors, it affects your streets, your beliefs, your emotions, your pocketbook. Everything is politics.
I love covering South Carolina politics because there are so many characters, so many big personalities.
And they're just people, and their beliefs and their attitudes and what they do, and it's an arena.
We have some great people on our team that have just a really deep breadth of institutional knowledge about the state and about the politics that are at play.
We know the politicians. We have their cell phone numbers. We are here in the State House with them. every day. If there's something that I want confirmed, I can just walk up to the representative or the senator or walk down to the governor's office and ask. The Palmetto Politics newsletter has all of our politics content in one place 3 times a week. So you'll never miss a story.
It's going to be your best source of what's breaking in politics in South Carolina. When you have an organized, dedicated 5-member political team, I mean, you try to give the most coverage, the most in-depth coverage, the most accurate coverage, the most up-to-date coverage of everything in the state, and that's what the Post and Courier is doing.